think there's a lot of people who are going to be excited about that.
Yep, we are really.
Okay. Well, we're excited to get an update on launch. Jen, let's go back to you.
Thanks, Laura. Now let's head back to the Mission Director Center to get an update from NASA's Daryl now. Daryl?
Hi, Jen. So an update from the launch team, and that is that currently we are no-go weather-wise if the launch were to happen right now. But of course, we're T-minus and 12 and a half minutes at the moment. There are two rules, weather rules, that they establish here that are in violation at the moment, and they are the detached anvil cloud rule and the surface electric field rule. As you look from this view at the rocket up into the sky, you can see that we've got some dark clouds in the area. The concern is that there's a storm cell approaching us that may cause the launch to go into no-go at the T0, which it is also forecast to go. But SpaceX has decided, as you can see, that storm cell kind of weakens as it's going over land. They've decided they want to take this count down to 30 seconds and make the call then on whether or not to abort for poor weather conditions. So as you can see, the rocket is being fueled at this moment, and they are continuing with their count at T-minus 11 minutes and 37 seconds. Now, this booster that you see here is familiar to this launch pad because it has launched on previous missions along with the capsule, the spacecraft on the top. There you see it, the booster coming back to land after it launched on CRS-17. It was a beautiful shot right there, looking over the Atlantic Ocean onto landing pad 1, where it came down to a nearly perfect landing. That booster was then taken, refurbished, and now they've got it sitting on the pad again to launch up on another CRS mission. The spacecraft at the top, the Dragon spacecraft, well, it's flown 2 prior missions. And as you can see there from that close-up shot, that particular spacecraft is making a record now. It actually is flying on its 3rd mission, and it's got badging to prove it. You see the SpaceX logo there, but underneath the P, they have a couple of badges that indicate it has flown twice before to the International Space Station on CRS-13 and CRS-6. And as you look over to the right of the SpaceX logo, underneath the X, you can see the Apollo 50th badging. And that's a nice touch there as they honor and help us honor the 50th anniversary of Apollo 11. And today, in fact, would be the 50 years to the day mark that Apollo 11 astronauts returned to Earth and splashed down in the Pacific Ocean. Now, we are sitting at T-minus 10 minutes and counting. We're going to toss it back to Jen, but we are keeping our eyes to the skies and listening to the launch team, which is currently keeping the count going. Jen, we'll toss it back to you.
Thanks, Daryl. The Dragon spacecraft will be filled with critical materials to directly support science and research that will take place on the International Space Station. A new international docking adapter called IDA-3 is one of CRS-18's primary payloads. When installed, the adapter will provide a connecting point for spacecraft designed to carry astronauts for NASA's Commercial Crew Program, as well as non-NASA missions. The adapters are built to the International Docking System standard, which means any spacecraft designed using these measurements can use the adapter. The Biofabrication Facility, or BFF, is designed to print organ-like tissues in microgravity. Printing the complex structures found inside human organs has proven difficult to accomplish in Earth's gravity environment. BFF is an early step in a long-term plan to eventually manufacture whole human organs in space. Another exciting payload is the BioRock investigation. With BioRock, we hope to gain insights into how microbes grow in space and how we might use them in human exploration and settlement of space, from mining to turning rocks into soil on the Moon and Mars. And now to give us a look at another mission investigation is NASA's Laura Aguiar. Laura?
Thank you, Jennifer. So yes, NASA has a lot of science going on board, but commercial business has the opportunity for space R&D as well. Joining me now is Ken Shields. He is the Vice President and Chief Operating Officer of the U.S. National Laboratory on station. So I hear we're going to set some records.
We are, Laura. We're looking forward to setting some records. Tonight, when we launch SpaceX 18, we're going to launch 25 ISS National Laboratory sponsored payloads. That's a single launch record for the U.S. National Laboratory. In addition to that, with the arrival of these payloads, it's going to be 90 for the year, which is another record, a year high for the National Laboratory. And last, We're going to set a crew time usage record for the year also. Approaching 1,000 hours is what we're baseline to do right now. So we're very proud of that and looking forward to it.
Oh, absolutely. So why is it important to have a U.S. National Laboratory on station?
The U.S. National Laboratory, we focus on microgravity research and development initiatives to benefit life on Earth. So it's a way to open up the use of the ISS, access to space and microgravity for a whole new user community that's not NASA looking to utilize the ISS to further their expedition goals.
Okay, Ken, we know how important it is to keep the environment pristine for our astronauts' welfare, but what's this we hear about slime on board?
What is this slime you speak of, Laura? That's right, we're going to fly slime in space. So an important part of the National Lab mission is also to excite and engage the next generation, the future generation of engineers and explorers, and we do that by learning while we have some fun. So we are going to launch slime in space and see how this non-Newtonian fluid behaves in microgravity.
All right, Jen, we're going to hand this back to you really quick before somebody gets the idea to dump slime on our heads.
Thanks, Laura. We are now just 7 minutes from launch. Let's head back over to the Mission Director Center where NASA's Daryl Nail is monitoring communications. Hey, Daryl, how are things looking?
Well, Jen, they're looking not so good at this very moment. We are currently no-go for weather at the T0 mark, which is 6:24 and 30 seconds this evening. But SpaceX is continuing with the count because they are hoping that there will be a break in the weather, which, as you can currently see, we have some clearing in and around the pad, but then you look in another direction, as you see there, and you see some dark clouds off in the distance. So this is going to come down to the wire. And just to recap for you, SpaceX teams discussed this situation as you're watching the gaseous oxygen venting off from the top of the rocket there. They discussed the possibility that they might catch a break, and they want to see if they can just do that. So they're going to let this count get down to 30 seconds. And then at that moment, if we are still no-go weather-wise, then they will abort the launch attempt. But if not, and it clears in the next few minutes or right up to 30, then they're going to go ahead and fire this thing off. And so what we're looking at now in terms of the countdown and where we're at 5 minutes and 47 seconds and counting. They have been put the Dragon to internal power. They began chilling the engines, which helps prepare them for the super cold oxygen, which is part of the fueling system. They get it as cold and as dense as possible so it can have more lifting capability. They also, some of the things to look for in the last few seconds of launch, they will flood that pad with water, and that helps suppress the sound, which is an incredible roar if you're here watching the launch. But it could be too much, in fact, damaging if they don't flood the pad with water. We're getting down to 5 minutes, and we are still no-go for 2 weather factors for launch. As we get down in underneath 5 minutes, the RP1 fueling should be complete. And as they continue to work this, we'll give you a heads up that just about in about a few seconds, they would start retracting the strong back, which is that structure that is holding the rocket upside, vertical. Let's listen in now to the count to see how it proceeds. All right, I've been listening into the teams as they discuss the situation. They are continuing with the count underneath 3 minutes and counting. We are close to completing the fueling of the liquid oxygen, and they are close to closing out the stage 1 fueling.
Are you interested in seeing radar again?
Let's take a look at the radar just to get a sense, since this is going to be a close call. As you can see, that clump of clouds that starts off very strong, green, plenty of rain, but starts to dry out. There is Space Launch Complex 40. And as that storm system approaches, you can see how it is weakening. And that is apparently what the hope is that those launch criteria, which are commit criteria, those violations will be lifted as that system weakens. But from our views that we can see, it just seems like a mixed bag. We have areas of the sky that appear clear. We also have areas like that one right there. If you were looking at that and that direction alone, you'd think, well, let's launch this rocket. But you look at this view, and it tells you a different story. In fact, you can see some rain droplets. That's looking back to the west. That cloud that you see coming out there, venting off the oxygen, 1 minute and 25 seconds to launch. Just 60 seconds until they make a decision on whether or not to launch this rocket today. The backup date is tomorrow, should they need it. We're approaching the minute mark, and then about 15 seconds later, listen for the launch director to see if he gives go for launch.
Falcon 9 startup. Dragon is in startup.
And here we approach decision time. 5 seconds rather.
Hold. I'm countdown 1.
Launch board's running.
And there you have it. The launch is a no-go for today.
Crude scrub.
They abort and scrubbed the launch. They were trying and hoping that the weather would clear at the last second, but it did not. The conditions early on were 70% no-go, but as this one storm cell, which started off around Lakeland a couple hours ago and proceeded quickly to the launch pad, it was forecast that it could be a factor, but it was a close call. And SpaceX now going to push this launch to tomorrow, just around 6 o'clock. They're going to go ahead and scrub it 24 hours and see if they can revisit this tomorrow, which is unfortunate. But early on today, there were storms rolling all over the Space Center, and you would have thought they had no chance. And then we got this break that you're looking at right here, this little opening in the clouds, and it seemed like it might just happen. But in the end, they held out hope for as long as they could, right down to 30 seconds, before going into a 24-hour hold. So we scrubbed the launch from now, and that's going to do it for us out here at Hangar AE in Cape Canaveral. Jennifer, we'll toss it back to you in the studio.
As you've just heard, today's launch has been scrubbed. This concludes our coverage of today's CRS-18 launch attempt. For updates on the next attempt and this resupply mission, visit nasa.gov. Thank you for joining us.